What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And as you may have guessed, I'm back to talk about a new Star Wars show. This time, it's Maul Shadow Lord, which just finished streaming a week ago, and I was skeptical of this show long before it released, because we've already got a damn near perfect character arc for Darth Maul in Star Wars, so I didn't really see the point of this series. I wasn't anticipating it, but at the same time, I was cautiously optimistic, because aside from the tales of the whatever shows, the Star Wars animated series have a pretty solid track record at this point, and now that it's wrapped up, I'm happy to say I liked this show. I thought it was pretty good, although it is imperfect, and I'm going to talk about that in this video, because despite having a lot of really strong elements, I do think it suffers from some of the issues I've seen plaguing all of Star Wars as of late. Starting off, I might as well point out this is by far the most accessible Star Wars show or piece of media we've gotten in a while. There are no world-destroying issues or character-breaking decisions. It kind of brings things back to what most general audiences associate with Star Wars. We've got the classic moral divide between the light and the dark side, do-gooders fighting back against Imperial oppression, kick-ass lightsaber duels, and deeper exploration of certain aspects of the Force. Hell, it follows Darth Maul, a character who most of us are familiar with without even relying entirely on the context of all the development he's received from the Clone Wars and other television shows, although that does certainly help. But the most pleasantly surprising thing about this show, to me at least, is that despite its namesake having been a staple of this franchise for the last 25 years, in actuality, it's a story about entirely new characters who bring fresh perspectives to these familiar concepts that we have seen before. The Lawsons are really the star characters of this show, in my opinion. Wagner Moura as Brander Lawson is a fantastic audience surrogate. Your average Joe just trying to do the right thing in an immensely difficult time, struggling to determine what is most important to him in his life. Upholding the law in a time when he knows that's damn near impossible, protecting the unjustly persecuted Jedi, or just spending time with his son Riley, who he's been neglecting since his marriage fell apart. And that's not to say that Maul himself doesn't have some pretty good material here. The show does a great job of showcasing both his strengths and weaknesses. I'm highlighting that because it's caused some controversy amongst the fan base, with people claiming he's been nerfed, because we see him get his ass kicked a lot in this show. But I found that quite refreshing. It's actually neat to see this character get shaken up and be challenged by something. We're reminded that it's his unwillingness to move on from his unrelenting quest for vengeance that's trapped him in this vicious cycle, despite how badly he may desire to do good. Speaking of which, the animation is used to great effect as a way of reflecting Maul's damaged psyche, with a heavier reliance on smear frames and matte paintings in the background, even jagged edges being added to the lightsabers. As everyone has been saying, the Clone Wars style of animation has reached its peak with this series. I didn't think it could get any better after The Bad Batch, but I'm glad to have been proven wrong. As someone currently rewatching the early seasons of the Clone Wars with my friends, it truly is insane to see how far this art style has come. Something else that's reached its peak in this series are the fight scenes. Just in general, but especially the lightsaber duels. There's a level of fluidity to these sequences that is unmatched by any other Star Wars animated series, or just project in general. They don't feel weightless, though. There's something visceral about them. Every single hit has impact, and I don't know what to chalk that up to. It could be the incredible sound design, or once again, just them continually finding ways to innovate on their use of animation. But one cannot talk about the things this show does better than anything else without mentioning the Inquisitors, because we've got Marok, the fart cloud from Ahsoka, and the Plague Doctor, both of whom Ahsoka killed in the lamest ways possible, but this show came along and gave them a menacing screen presence which is off the charts. This is by far the most threatening depiction we've ever had of the Inquisitors in Star Wars canon. These effective, recurring villains catching up with our heroes at every turn, almost always managing to do some pretty severe damage. They are the relentless, cold-blooded assassins that they were probably always meant to be in Star Wars, but which were unfortunately handicapped by the young demographic of Star Wars Rebels and the incompetent writing of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I will always stand by that I think Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order has the best exploration of the Inquisitors as a concept when it comes to how they are created and what they are forced to undergo in order to become these monsters. But as far as them being on the field doing their job, this is the best we've ever seen them. Now I'll move on to some of the mixed aspects of this show, at least in my opinion. One being the score, which is typically an aspect I praise about these animated series, because the Kiners have an incredible track record, and this one just didn't really do it for me, aside from a few moments where it pops off. I did like Devon's theme and Maul's new Shadow Lord theme, which eventually morphs into his theme from Star Wars Rebels in one of the series' best sequences, where he resolves to stop Sidious's reign of terror, or of course the hints of Duel of the Fates that we get here and there. But other than that, I gotta say I expected more out of the Kiners, especially after their masterwork that was the Bad Batch soundtrack. Some of the fan servicey aspects of this show were a little bit obnoxious to me, but they were still better executed than a lot of other Star Wars media from recent memory. As I'm sure all of you know at this point, Darth Vader makes his grand appearance in the finale of this season, and I'm not gonna lie, I liked seeing him. He proved to be this unspeaking Terminator-esque threat that pushed everyone to their limits, ultimately serving as a scapegoat for Maul to eliminate Master Daki so that he could take over as Devon's new mentor in the Force. I thought all of that was well executed, and Vader served his purpose within the narrative, with additional subtext considering his connection to Maul as the former apprentice of Darth Sidious, and whether or not you want to run with the interpretation that the Duel of the Fates decided the fate of Anakin, you could interpret this scene as Maul coming face to face with that which he created. However, there is certainly an argument to be made that Vader being presented in this way isn't something we haven't already seen time and time again. The prime examples I'm thinking of are Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor, Rebels, hell, even the Bad Batch Sanctuary novel from last year had a similar scene, and especially Rogue One, with a shot from this series being taken almost directly from that film as he walks out of the darkness, igniting his lightsaber and illuminating the entire space with red light. And I will say, there are some storylines in this show that feel kind of repetitive and strangely paced, One of the main through lines over the course of this season is Maul slowly corrupting Devin with the dark side. And I did enjoy this story. Devin is an interesting character, and I liked seeing her relationship with Maul develop over the course of the season, and how that clashed with her relationship with her master Daki. However, up until episode 7 or so, we kind of just watch the same situation play out over and over again. She and Maul will encounter each other. He'll make some counters to her beliefs in the Jedi Code. She'll get mad, they have a quick scuffle, ultimately end up working together against a greater threat and realizing they're a decent team before being separated. That same scene happened like 5 times, and I was wondering when it would actually go anywhere. Likewise, in the first 4 episodes of the season, we watch Lawson and his partner Two Boots arguing about whether or not they should alert the Empire to Maul's presence and what they're dealing with on Janix. At first, this was fine. I didn't mind it. But after like the 10th time of Two Boots saying, "Hey, yo, I think we should call the Empire," and Lawson saying, "Hell no, I don't want to do that," I was just like,
shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up, please!
And this does, unfortunately, lead to some contrivances in the story, and characters making dumb decisions in order to further the plot. Something that's bothered me since this show started is, in the very first episode, when Maul and his allies break into the police station to free crime boss Ludi Vario, Maul inexplicably does not kill Lawson. I've never understood why this is, because Maul is indiscriminately mowing down people all over this show, but for some reason, in this particular instance, he doesn't kill Brander Lawson. It's not like he knew who he was at this point, or would have a reason to spare him, so it seems like Lawson just had some pretty handy Beskar plot armor in that scene. Similarly, in the 4th episode of the season, Lawson and his team track down Maul at his hideout, and Maul gives him an offer over a Zoom call to ally with him in order to quell the looming threat of the Empire. And rather than taking advantage of this opportunity and forming a false alliance with Maul in order to spare his own guys, and as a way of potentially capturing Maul in the long run, Lawson just says, "Nah, I don't agree to your deal, man," which obviously leads to his entire team being killed. The only reason for any of this happening is so that this event can serve as the catalyst for Two Boots finally calling in the Empire at the end of the episode. And that's really what drags down this entire series. The pacing, which is very poor all across the board, leading to some underdeveloped characters, half-baked arcs, and a strange disparity in screen time between the characters. Maul's entire crew of guys is woefully undefined. We've got some Mandalorian guys, his 2 Zabrak brothers, who I'll call the Zabros for the sake of this video, Spybot, the goofy droid, who I've seen a lot of people pointing out feels like a Michael Bay Transformers character, and Vario, the goofy crime boss who I mentioned previously. We've got a pretty motley crew together by the end of the season, but I wish I felt more when these characters started getting knocked off. The Zabros are killed off in a way which I feel was supposed to be meaningful, but aside from some obvious parallels to Savage Opress's death at the hands of Palpatine, there wasn't much substance to their sacrifices. As I said, I do like Lawson and his family providing this audience-type perspective on the series and this massive shift taking place in the Star Wars galaxy. The small pieces we got to see of their lives were quite compelling, but that's the issue. We don't get to spend a lot of time on that before all hell breaks loose, which may seem contradictory to what I said earlier about how the show takes too long to get going. However, it does feel like the series is treading water for the first 4 episodes. As previously stated, it's relentlessly irritating to hear Two Boots remind us every 5 minutes about how badly he wants to call in the Empire. And once the Empire arrives halfway through the season, the show does gain a sense of tension and urgency which it had previously lacked, but that leads to its own slew of issues, like the divide in attention between our cast of characters. The dynamic they had seemingly been setting up between Lawson and Maul, building them up as thematic opposites, just gets dropped halfway through the season, with them dealing with their own shit, going on completely unrelated arcs simultaneously until their stories are loosely strung together in the finale. Maul's storyline about tracking down and getting revenge on all the crime bosses who betrayed him also gets cut off halfway through until it's kind of brought back at the end, with Dryden Voss from Solo: A Star Wars Story coming in to rescue him from the clutches of Darth Vader. This is why, despite enjoying the fresh perspectives that these new characters bring to familiar Star Wars concepts, I can't help but see a lot of missed potential here, with characters and dynamics that couldn't be thoroughly explored because the story is moving a million miles an hour. This is the most accessible Star Wars show in recent memory, but that's both a strength and a weakness. It feels like this show is the best of the franchise's worst tendencies. As I said earlier, it has some of the best lightsaber duels I've ever seen, but for as well executed as they are, they were a bit too much for me after a while. It became sensory overload with the amount of blades clashing and swift movements. It almost feels like a response to the people who claimed Andor was boring by throwing so much on screen that people would never be bored. And that's not to say that this show didn't have substance, because it most certainly does. That's why I liked it, because despite having all the flash and style, it does have substance under the surface, which is why it's leagues ahead of anything from the Mandoverse or most things to come out of this homogenized MCU-style era of Star Wars. But I still think it could have been better. And that's why it's on the weaker end of Star Wars animated series. Just compare this show's length to the other animated Star Wars series we have. The Clone Wars, Rebels, and The Bad Batch all had 15 to 22 episodes per season, most of which were 30 minutes. This season consists of 10 episodes, some of which barely come in at 20 minutes. That's not a lot of time to tell a story. And while I did enjoy this series by the end, and am looking forward to seeing where it goes in future, I just wish there was a little bit more here. Because despite delivering everything it needed to in order to please the audience, it is limited by its format. I don't know what led to this issue. It could be a budgeting problem, because the animation being as gorgeous as it is in this show cannot come cheap. But if we need less polished animation to get a tighter story, I think that's a sacrifice I'd be willing to make. But you guys let me know. What are your thoughts on Maul Shadow Lord overall? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Because From what I've seen, this show is loved by everyone. It has the highest rating on everything out of any Star Wars show, and I just can't really get behind that myself. But I'd be very curious to hear from those of you who do think it is deserving of that title. Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye.